Good evening, Asma. Good evening, Vanshika. Okay. Good evening, Ayushi. Okay, I'm Rahul Saha, and today we'll be talking about the female reproductive tract and also the menstrual cycle. Okay, then. So in the last class, I had discussed about the cytotrophoblast and also the symsiotrophoblast also, right? And how does the implantation occur after the blastocyst hatching, the role of the cell adhesion molecules like integrin, selectin, troponin, all those were discussed in detail. So today, and in the last class towards the end, we had discussed about the functional parts of the ovary and correlated with the discussion that we had previously regarding the formation of the tertiary or the Graafian follicle. Okay, so let's continue our discussion with the functional anatomy of the uterus or womb. Okay, so when we talk about the uterus or womb, so the uterine functional anatomy, I should be putting the heading as uterine functional anatomy. Okay, it all depends on gonadotropin releasing hormone. Okay, so that also we'll talk about because that is directly related with your class 11th chapter, last chapter, chemical control and coordination. So first of all, tell you a little bit about the gonadotropin releasing hormone and its secretion. You might have heard the name of gonadotropin releasing hormone. Okay, but the thing is, the gonadotropin releasing hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone, also known as an acronym GNRH, but this is an older acronym. As per the latest acronym, this N is written as capital, so it is written as GNRH now. Now, if you write this kind of GNRH, it is wrong as per the latest, you can say, terminology. Okay, so the thing is, this hormone specifically is a 10 peptide hormone. Okay, it's a 10 peptide hormone, also known as decapeptide. Okay, it's a 10 peptide hormone, means it is made up of 10 amino acids. You can directly write it is made up of 10 amino acids. Okay, so 10 amino acids, decapeptide. Now the only problem with GNRH is its half-life. If you talk about, if you have studied about half-life in chemistry, chemical kinetics, okay, for first order reactions, it is T half equal to 0.693 by K, right? So its half-life means the required amount of time to degrade half the GNRH molecules is only 2 to 4 minutes. Okay, it is degraded by various proteases. Okay, and then it is cleared by through via the glomerular filtration. Okay, so its half life is only 2 to 4 minutes. So people or in ladies who are not able to conceive, okay, so that time you can give them or administer them specific analogs of gonadotropin known as GNRH, analogs of gonadotropin releasing hormone known as GNRH agonists, which will bind to the GNRH receptor, which belongs to the GPCR. You can say super family, and then it will cause the signaling event. Okay, so that can be done, and that is the primary reason why GNRH agonist medicines, they are in the, you can say, market, because you just modify few amino acids, make sure that it can bind with high affinity to the GNRH receptor, and that modification of one or two amino acids would increase the half-life so that it would have a prolonged effect. You don't have to administer it every day, right, or every hour. It will increase its half-life. And more than 1000 neurons within the hypothalamus, okay, more than 1000 neurons within the hypothalamus, they secrete GNRH mainly from the paraventricular and arcuate nuclei. Okay, these two are the sites in the hypothalamus from where the GNRH is released in a pulsatile manner. Okay, pulsatile manner. That is very important. Pulsatile secretion of gonadotropin. If you have not studied that in the class 11th, I'll tell you this also. So paraventricular and arcuate nuclei, if you have studied in class 11 nervous system, nuclei are the clusters of cyton or cell body of the neuron in the central nervous system, whereas ganglion is the same cluster of cell body in the PNS, right, peripheral nervous system. We call it nuclei here or nucleus here. We call it ganglion or ganglia plural in the PNS. Okay, so there are more than 2 to 300 types of nuclei present. More than 200 neurons types are present. All are neurons, but there are various types. We have pyramidal neurons, we have non-pyramidal neurons. So there are various kinds of nuclei, and each nuclei or each nucleus, they secrete specific neurotransmitters also. Like we have dopaminergic nuclei in the substantia nigra of the midbrain. The substantia nigra is the biggest nucleus in the midbrain. Those neurons, they only secrete dopamine as neurotransmitter. Okay, like that. So we have a specific set of neurons who are dedicated or which are dedicated towards secreting a specific neurotransmitter or hormone, like that. These nuclei, they secrete mostly the GNRH. Okay, and in case of dopamine, if those neurons degenerate or they happen to die due to accumulation of a certain protein known as alpha synuclein, then what happens is dopamine is downregulated its level, and then we have or then we suffer from a disease known as Parkinson's disease. You might have heard of. Okay, that is endocrinology. This is how gonadotropin is secreted. One more thing I told you, it is a pulsatile manner. So pulsatile secretion is nothing but intermittent secretion. It is not secreted only once. It is secreted, suppose, every half an hour, like that. So intermittent secretion of certain neuro hormones, you can say hormones or neurotransmitters, are known as pulsatile secretion. So since its half-life is so less, it has to be, you can say, intermittently secreted in order to keep the receptors in the active state. Okay, otherwise the effect of GNRH will be nullified. So they are secreted in a pulsatile manner. Okay, and the hypothalamic GNRH gene expression occurs intermittently. Okay, again pulsatile manner, and is dependent upon a promoter. Its promoter is a 300 BP promoter region. The GNRH gene has a 300 BP huge promoter region. Okay, 300 BP promoter region. Okay, that promoter is known as neuron specific enhancer. That is no need to know, but you should know it has a big promoter to which the transcription factors, because it's a eukaryote, so transcription 2 means transcription factor 2 will be binding. 2 means specific for RNA polymerase 2, which will then recruit RNA polymerase 2. Okay, and then the transcription of GNRH gene will continue. Okay, so if GNRH production does not happen, okay, you can say neither ovulation nor you can say you will not be able to switch the stages in the menstrual cycle. Okay, you wouldn't be having the development of the endometrial lining, the vascularity that we talk about, right? So nothing will be able to get underway. Okay, that is why this GNRH introduction is very, very necessary. Now then we can switch on to our main discussion known as the good evening. So next discussion will be our functional anatomy of the uterus. Now the uterus or womb is a single inverted, you can say single inverted means it is just upside down pear shaped organ. Okay, it is a single inverted pear shaped organ. Womb anatomy. Inverted pear shaped organ. Okay, and where is it located? We should know the location also as per the NEET examination. It is located in the pelvic cavity above the urinary bladder and in front of the rectum. Located in the pelvic cavity above the urinary bladder and you can say anterior to the rectum or in front of rectum, I can say in front of rectum. That is the case. Now, in case of nulliparous women, nulliparous means the women who have never given birth, okay, till their time. So, in case of nulliparous women, the uterus is about 7.5 centimeter or 3 inches long. Okay, so in case of nulliparous women means who have not given birth, the uterus diameter or dimension is 3 inches long, you can say 2 inches wide, 3 inches long, 2 inches wide, okay, and 1 inch thick, 1 inch thick, right? And in multiparous women, those who have previously born children, the shape of the uterus is larger and its shape is much more variable because when the you can say you are able to conceive, right? That time the uterus increases and then again after the childbirth it undergoes atrophy. So the due to the gonadotropic and FSH induced, you can say growth, even when atrophy happens, the size still will outgrow or will able to outcompete the size of the nulliparous women or the uterus present in the nulliparous women. Okay. Now it is supported by bands or cords of tissue, which are the folds of the you can say visceral peritoneum. Those are known as uterine ligaments. Okay, so those are known as uterine ligaments. If you have been able to study the you can say entire peritoneum in detail, like what is the omentum and what is the meaning of, you can say, mesentery, then you will be knowing it. So in later classes, if we start offline, I'll teach you the peritoneum in detail, like what is coelom in real meaning of coelomate, acoelomate, eucoelomate. What is body cavity in the sense? Like how does the folds occur? Or how do the folds occur? What is retroperitoneal? Like we say kidney is retroperitoneal. Stomach is intraperitoneal organ. Is a intraperitoneal organ. So what those things mean? So what do those things mean? So I'll tell you that in later classes. Okay. So if a frontal section is made through the uterus, okay, several distinct regions are revealed. Okay, you have a dome-shaped region above the points of entrance of oviduct, that is known as the uterine fundus. Okay, that is known as uterine fundus. I'll just show you the image of uterus so that you can relate to it. Uterus internal. You can look at this image. Okay, bigger image. Okay, let's settle with this image only. Okay. So that is known as the uterine fundus, as you can see in the image. Okay, and then you have the body of the uterus, that is known as the uterine corpus. That is the body of the uterus is the tapering central portion. Okay, that is known as the uterine corpus or body. Okay, body of the uterus, you can see it is tapering down. Okay, it's a tapering central portion. So you have the body, or you can call it uterine corpus, which is a tapering portion. Okay, it tapers down, tapering central portion. Then what you have is this tapering central portion ends at an external constriction, which is known as the uterine isthmus. This ends at an external constriction, okay, which is known by the name as, you can say, uterine isthmus. Okay, uterine isthmus. You can say th is silent here. You can see here that is known as uterine isthmus. Okay, so it ends here. Okay, then the wall of the uterine fundus and corpus has three layers of tissue. Okay, always remember the external surface of the uterus is covered by a thin membrane, the peritoneum. Okay, this is covered by the thin membrane, the perimetrium. Sorry, it is nothing but peritoneum only. So technically it is called as the, you can say, perimetrium. Okay, the external layer. Well, that is why you should be aware of the you can see here endometrium, then myometrium. Okay, and here will be the perimetrium. Okay, the outer portion, the outermost portion. So the thing is, the uterus is divided into three portions. You can call the external surface of the uterus, or the most external, I should be saying, the most or the outermost surface of the uterus is covered by, you can say, the a very thin membrane known as perimetrium. thin membrane known as perimetrium. Okay. Now, what is this perimetrium? If you have studied the anatomy properly in class 11th, okay, you might have heard of something known as serosa or adventitia. Okay, so this coat is also known as serosa, which is continuous with the layer covering the oviducts and other peritoneal organs. Okay, so serosa is nothing but the folds of the visceral peritoneum. So I'll just show you something. Okay, you might not have seen those. I'll show you the mesentery diagram bit, just to give you a perspective about the anatomy. Otherwise, these things will always be mesentery. Wait. If you see this image properly, if I can zoom it in, okay, if it opens properly, the site is not opening. Other images. Then look at this one. This is nothing but this is known as parietal peritoneum. This is known as visceral peritoneum. Okay, these are not two peritoneum as your teacher might have told you in class 11. Many I have heard stories about this that they tell you that parietal peritoneum is different, visceral peritoneum is different. Then there is something known as the peritoneal fluid, like that. So these are not different things. You can see here this is the parietal peritoneum. When you are putting the liver in, this is the liver, okay, you're putting the liver inside, this is the liver only, like this the liver goes in, and when it is engulfing the liver, this is known as, you can say, visceral peritoneum. You can see visceral peritoneum making a fold here and then wrapping the stomach also. This is the stomach, okay. So this layer, the layer of the visceral peritoneum on top of the stomach, this becomes the outermost layer. Getting? This layer of peritoneum is known as serosa only, nothing else. Okay, always know the meaning of serosa, because in digestive system you might have studied. I don't know whether you have studied or not, but you should have studied the fact that the digestive system contains four layers. The innermost is the mucosa here. Then you have some mucosa. Then you have muscularis, and the last layer, this one, okay, golden type layer, is the serosa. Serosa is nothing but fold of the visceral peritoneum encircling the entire organ. So this stomach and liver, they are intraperitoneal because they are inside the region, they are present in the body where they are covered by folds of visceral peritoneum. But if you see here, if an organ is here, okay, like kidney is here, this is your kidney, suppose. So it is not encircled by completely by the visceral peritoneum. Okay, it is just, you can say, a layer of parietal peritoneum is touching the posterior part. So kidney is retroperitoneal because it is out of the peritoneum. It is not encircled by the visceral peritoneum. So that is what is known as retroperitoneal. These are great neat questions. High order neat questions. Why is kidney an retroperitoneal organ? Why is stomach an intraperitoneal organ? What is the difference between serosa and adventitia? What is your serosa? Nothing but visceral peritoneum. Okay, surrounding that organ. This is the basic of it. So you have the, you can say, the visceral peritoneum surrounding the uterus also. Okay, that is the meaning of serosa. Okay, now inside the perimetrium, when we go deeper, we have a thicker layer of smooth muscle. Okay, we have a thicker layer, then we have a thicker layer of smooth muscle, okay, that is known by the name as myometrium. Smooth muscle means tapering ends, then they'll be controlled by the autonomic nervous system, right? So, which is thickest in which region? Again, a great neat question. The smooth muscle is thickest in which region? It is thickest in the corpus region or body region. Okay, thickest in the corpus region, technically. Corpus region. Okay. Next is the myometrium. Why is it containing muscle and why is it thick? Because it is capable of very strong contractions, and those contractions are inducted by both the placenta and the, you can say, baby, okay, during the parturition reflex labor pain, right, via the oxytocin neurophysin axis, okay, mainly the oxytocin hormone, and the relaxin will also widen the pelvic bone, and this is a positive feedback loop, oxytocin, because the release of more and more oxytocin will cause more and more contraction, and more oxytocin will cause more and more oxytocin to be secreted by the, you can say, neurohypophysis or the posterior pituitary gland. The oxytocin will not go and bind to the, you can say, hypothalamus in order to stop the secretion. It will let the hypothalamus make more and then secrete also more from the pituitary gland. So that is a kind of positive feedback loop where you have the end product is causing more and more of the end product to be released. Okay, not like the negative feedback loop where the end product, it will seize the, it will bind to its, you can say, organ that is releasing it, the gland, and it will seize the release because too much product has already been produced. This is positive feedback loop because the end product of oxytocin is stimulating the hypothalamus to secrete more and more oxytocin. And why is this necessary? From an evolutionary perspective is you need the contractions to continue incessantly, ceaselessly, so that the baby can be expelled out. Otherwise, if they all of a sudden they cease, then the baby will not be able to get expelled via normal delivery. Then you have to go for C-section, okay, operation. So the thing is, it is great for strong contractions, the myometrium, okay. Its muscle fibers, they increase in length and also number, okay. Myofibrils increase in length and number during pregnancy, okay. With its muscle fiber increase in length and number both. Increase in length and number. Muscle fibers. Usually muscles, they do not divide, but these are smooth muscles. They can undergo conditional mitosis. Okay, muscle fibers. These are not skeletal muscles. Okay. Now, the layer internal to that, it is known as the endometrium. Okay, very important layer. Okay, internal to myometrium is the most important layer which we will be dealing in with regards to the menstrual cycle, which is again a great cycle of, you can say, gargantuan importance or significance. A graph comes directly in the board examination, then various pathways come in the board examination, and in the NEET examination, every part, the follicular phase or every phase, the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase, the luteal phase, and the menstrual phase itself, you need to know the negative feedback loop involved in all these four states. Okay, so internal to the myometrium is the layer of the uterus that lines the uterine cavity, the most internal or the innermost layer, known as the endometrium, the innermost layer, known as the endometrium. Now I'll tell you also the two regions that define this endometrium. Okay, number one region is, you can say that the endometrium can be divided into an internal surface layer, okay, the striatum functionalis, which is known as the functional layer, okay, the most, you can say, the innermost layer known as the striatum or you can call it the stratum functionalis. Okay, the functional layer, stratum functionalis. This is the functional layer. Okay, and this is on the surface, and deeper to that we have known as stratum basilis or the basal layer. Stratum basilis or the basal layer. Now, the stratum functionalis, it consists of a lining of epithelium and uterine glands, which is shed during menstruation. Always no, great neat question. Okay, again. So it is not the stratum basilis, but the stratum functionalis that contains the epithelial lining. Okay, stratum functionalis that contains the epithelial lining. Then also it contains the uterine glands, which is shed during menstruation. Okay, uterine glands, which is shed during the menstrual phase of menstruation, day 1 to day 4 or day 1 to day 5, it can go for. During the menstrual phase of the menstrual cycle. Now, what happens is the underlying stratum basilis is not shed during menstruation, okay, but it contains blood vessels that produce part of the menstrual flow. Okay, so after menstruation is over, the stratum basilis gives rise to a new stratum functionalis. Okay, so after this phase, when the follicular phase develops, the stratum basalis again can give rise to a new stratum functionalis. Okay, that is the case here. Okay, so what happens is, thus the endometrium undergoes marked changes in structure and function during the menstrual cycle, and these changes are under complete hormonal control. Okay, now the layers of the uterine cervix are similar to those of the uterine fundus and corpus, with a few important exceptions. You can say the cervical myometrium, okay, is thinner, and the cervical endometrium is not shed during menstruation. This is again a great neat question. Okay, the cervical myometrium is thinner, and the very important is the cervical endometrium. The cervical endometrium is not shed during the menstrual cycle. You can write it down in underlined words. It is never shed during menstrual cycle or menstruation. Okay. Now, glands in the lining of the cervix, they secrete mucus at varying degrees, varying concentrations during the menstrual cycle. Okay. In some stages of the cycle, what happens is this specific mucus made up of mucin protein, it forms a plug that retards sperm movement through the cervical canal. Okay, because you don't want polyspermy, so this is another way, distant way of, you can say, ceasing the polyspermy. Okay, so it will retard the movement, sperm movement through the cervical canal, and also prevent the infectious microorganisms from entering the uterine cavity. Okay, so the mucus produced in the cervix, it can retard sperm movement and can also prevent, you can say, infectious microorganisms from entering the uterine cavity. Okay, it would invariably retard or obstruct its movement. Now, the cervical canal is a very small channel within the cervix, and why is it so important is it connects the vaginal cavity with the uterine cavity. Cervical canal is a very small channel within the cervix. So, a small channel within the cervix that can, you can say, prevent, or sorry, that can connect the vaginal cavity with the uterine cavity, or that connects, I should be saying, that connects the vaginal cavity with the uterine cavity. Uterine cavity. Okay. So what happens is the opening of the cervical canal to the uterine cavity is the internal cervical, you can say it is written as internal cervical OS, whereas the opening of the cervical canal into the vagina is known as external cervical OS. Okay, so into the internal cervical OS, that is the opening of the cervical canal into the uterine cavity. Uterine cavity as per the nomenclature, and opening of the cervical canal into the vagina is known as external cervical OS. Okay, this you might have seen in various, you can say, prescription and all, they write like this in various report. So you can say this is the way the nomenclature has been made. Now, sometimes you can have pelvic infection also. Okay, the uterus is subject to infectious organisms entering through the vagina. Okay, like the Sexually transmitted diseases, gonorrhea, syphilis, neisseria, gonorrhea, treponema, pallidum, they can cause these kinds of diseases. Then you can have also the cervical cancer, okay, which is the eighth most common cause of cancer related death fatalities among the US women. Okay, so that is also true. You have the human papilloma virus. Okay, that's a great neat question. Human papilloma virus that causes the cervical cancer. It's an oncovirus. Okay, it's a very rare cancer that is caused by an oncovirus, human papilloma virus. And HPV it is known as, and nowadays, not even now, like it has been quite a lot of time that the vaccine has been developed, okay, against HPV infection. Therefore, you can stay protected from cervical cancer. So if you haven't, because this vaccination is not covered under common vaccination program for girls. So if you haven't had this vaccination till now, you can still ask your parents to get yourself vaccinated. Okay, to get yourself vaccinated, and you can then stay protected from cervical cancer, because more than men, women are extremely susceptible through the vaginal, you can say, contamination. Okay, vaginal induced transmission of the virus. So you can stay protected against this, you can say, lethal cancer disease, which is known by the name as cervical cancer. So if you have studied cancer, you know that before a cancer develops, the cervical cells would exhibit a precancerous condition known as dysplasia, and then it will turn into neoplasia. The neoplastic cells are the cancerous cells. Okay, so dysplasia, then anaplasia, then you have neoplasia. Okay, first of all, you will be having hypertrophy. If at all you have then hyperplasia, more and more cells, then disorganized, and then completely would change lineage, that is neoplasia. Okay, they would display contact inhibition. Okay, and they would keep on dividing. No checkpoints would be, you can say, down regulate, will be able to contain the division. Then anti-tumor or tumor suppression proteins like p53, they will be down regulated. And if you know, you might be knowing that elephants, they don't get cancer, or they get cancer very, you can say, in rarest of the rare event, because one of their proto-oncogenes p53 is highly upregulated in case of animals, sorry, in case of elephants, which is not that high regulated in case of humans, right? So that is there in case of females, right? Now, sometimes you can also develop cervical cysts and polyps. Okay, so cervical tissue can also form non-cancerous growths as a result of past infection or irritation. So, cervical cysts are there. They look like pea-sized whitish pimples. Okay, so these are usually not a problem, but they can be removed by heat, you can say cauterization, or by the freezing of the tissue. Okay, that is can, or you can go for laser beams. Okay, then the cervical polyps also appear as tear shaped growths extending into the, you can say, cervical this thing canal only. And these polyps are benign. Okay, you might be knowing that if you want to become cancerous, you have to become malignant, means you have to possess the activity to break off from one side and then reach the other side, and then also trigger angiogenesis or arteriogenesis by secreting vascular endothelial growth factor, because then you will be able to cause the production of blood vessels, small capillaries. Then those capillaries will be able to provide it HPO2, and then it can easily able to replicate and proliferate, because the cancer cells, they have high glycolytic cycle. Okay, and they also display the Warburg effect, the specialized cancer cells, because all the pyruvate is taken inside the mitochondria. So pyruvate concentration is always less in the cytosol, that is the Warburg effect, and therefore the cell upregulates glycolysis, because the end product is very low in the cytosol. So the glycolysis occurs in the cytosol, so you make more and more you can say go for more and more glycolysis and pyruvate, since it is exported or imported into the matrix, it will go for the Krebs cycle also. Krebs cycle will generate a lot of reducing equivalents. That is why the Krebs cycle happens, because 2 rounds of pyruvate will cause the, because 2 pyruvates are produced, 3 carbon molecules from the oxidation of 1,6-carbon glucose. This is C6H12O6. So 2 pyruvate molecules, when they completely undergo the Krebs cycle, what happens is 8 NADH molecules and 2 fat H2 molecules are produced. So 10 reducing equivalents means these are the electron storage houses which would donate electron to complex 1 to complex 2 and cause the perpetuation of the electron transport chain that will form the electrochemical gradient to the proton motive force via chemiosmotic theory, that would then produce or help you produce the ATP via aerobic respiration or oxidative phosphorylation event via the F1 F0 ATPase class complex 5. Okay, so if you have studied that in class 11th, you can relate to what I am referring to here. Okay, so these things are very, you can say, correlated. Okay, so polyps are benign. They do not have the tendency to break and again start the proliferation via art, you can say, capillary synthesis. So art, you can say, the cervical polyps are benign in creature or in nature, but under certain conditions these polyps can become malignant, that will give rise to, you can say, cervical cancer. Same way you can have colon polyps, large intestinal polyps, small intestinal polyps, and so on. Ultimately you can have the endometrial cancer also, you can develop. Okay, so it is more common in older women, okay, in also nulliparous women and those that are obese or highly diabetic. Okay, so those things are also present. Then there is something known as endometriosis. So sometimes the endometrial tissue, okay, this comes in your NEET examination, the endometrial tissue can detach from the uterus, okay, and lodge in other regions of the body such as the ovaries, oviducts. Okay, sometimes endometriosis, the endometrial tissue detaches, you can say, from the uterus and lodge in other regions of the body such as the ovaries, oviducts. Oviducts. Okay, then you can say uterine ligaments, urinary bladder, urethra, intestine. Okay, this, or you can say intestine. So these all things can happen. That is known as endometriosis. Now this is thought to occur during the menstrual flow when small pieces of endometrial tissue, they move in a retrograde manner, means back, going back in a reverse direction. Anterograde is forward direction. Anterograde transport, retrograde transport. Okay, so anterograde means from the, you can say, ER to Golgi. Retrograde means from the Golgi to ER if the protein is moving backwards. Okay, via, you can say, in the case of protein trafficking, that is known as retrograde flow. So small pieces of endometrial tissue, they move, small pieces of endometrial tissue move in a retrograde manner, means backwards. Okay, in a retrograde manner through the oviduct and into the peritoneal cavity rather than out through the vagina. okay, into the peritoneal cavity rather than they are thrown out through the vagina. Now this condition can be very very painful because the displaced tissue which is responsive to steroid hormones, it will expand. Steroid hormones are what? Estrogens, testosterone, and they are present in our blood. So they will expand, okay? It will expand and will bleed during each menstrual cycle. So you have, you can say, bleeding from various parts of the body. You can say this will often result in unusually painful menstrual periods. It is known as dysmenorrhea, okay? And other symptoms may also include like chronic pelvic pain, back pain, pain at ovulation or during, you can say, intercourse, then painful bowel movements also if it has been able to wrap around the large and small intestines. So that is, many things can occur, okay. Sometimes you have tipped uterus also. So the position of the uterus can vary in different women, okay. So in most cases the uterus is an anti-flexed position, like tilted forward at right angles to the vagina. But in about 1 out of 5 women, the uterus is in a retroflexed position, okay. That is, again, retro means being tilted backward instead of forward, okay. So in most cases you should be knowing the uterus is in the, again a great neat question, anti-flexed, okay, position. Anti-flexed position. That is, you can say, they are tilted forward at right angles to the vagina. You can say they are tilted forward at right angles to the vagina. But sometimes, in case of flipped uterus, in 1 out of 5 women, okay, you have flipped uterus. It can be, okay, the tilt can be, it can be retroflexed, again backwards, like retrograde movement. It can be retroflexed, means you can say it is tilted backward instead of forward, okay, tilted backward instead of forward. So that is all about your anatomy of the uterus and the various diseases that can be asked in NEET examination. One thing more I'll tell you, you may have prolapsed uterus. In case of prolapsed uterus, okay, that is the one in the uterus has slipped down towards the vagina. This would occur because the uterine ligaments are too relaxed or stretched. You can say the folds of the visceral peritoneum, they have, you can say, got too much relaxed, or sometimes they are torn also. That is known as, or near to being torn, that is known as prolapsed uterus, okay. So that is again delivery of a large infant, or you can say breech or forceps deliveries sometimes can also lead to uterine prolapse by stretching or damaging the uterine ligaments, okay. So that is also a thing of extreme concern or medical, you can say, intervention, okay. So that is there. So we'll start our talk regarding the, you can say, menstrual cycle in detail with the GNRH pulsatile motion that I have covered today in the next class. Okay, so I hope you were able to comprehend the lecture. If you've had any kind of queries, doubts, you can definitely ask me on my personal number to get my prompt reply. Okay then, thanks a lot. Let's meet you